The story of Mr. Chang's barbershop. This is the story of Mr. Chang. He is a 35-year-old married man who lives in Chinatown, New York with his family. He runs a family-owned barbershop in the heart of Chinatown. His family moved to New York around 90 years ago and they started this barbershop. Through the years, the responsibility for running the barbershop has been passed down to each new generation once they were deemed mature enough. Mr. Chang lives above the barbershop with his parents, his brother, sister, wife, and his 6 children. He started running the barbershop nearly 13 years ago, and after around 2 years he was approached by 2 shady merchants for a business deal. But in reality, he was being approached by 2 representatives of the Chinese mafia, and they offered him a deal. The deal was that he would invest in making a big storage which they could use as a place to store drugs, guns, and other things while they were awaiting transit. In return, they would guarantee Mr. Chang that his business would boom. Mr. Chang accepted, and therefore was an associate of the Chinese mafia, and was protected by them. Business picked up because the mafia bullied other barbershops out of business. Only a few were left, and because of that, Mr. Chang's barbershop was doing great. Mr. Chang bought a garage in a very remote alley in Chinatown, in which he made a tunnel underground where the mafia could store their illegal materials. The reason why the mafia didn't just do this themselves is because now Mr. Chang has the ownership of the garage, so if it were to be raided, he would be the only one to go to prison. Since he is only slightly associated with the mafia, they would not be able to track down any of its members, and if he were to snitch, his family would pay for it. Mr. Chang knew all of this and was willing to accept the consequences of this deal with the mafia. Years passed, and the deal with the mafia had gone great for Mr. Chang. During all of this time, his family didn't even know about this arrangement. Chang kept it to himself, and his family never suspected much, since it was a hush-hush operation between him and the mafia. The only one that actually even noticed that Chang was often going somewhere without telling anybody was his brother Young. But he really didn't take interest in the matter up until recently. So one day he was hanging out with a few of his friends, and he saw Chang going somewhere, so he said to his friends, "Let's follow him, 'cause I want to know where he's going." They started following him, and Chang didn't suspect a thing, since they were following him from far enough so that he doesn't spot them. Chang arrived at his garage, and there was a big truck and a few people in suits talking to him, which was, of course, the mafia. Young and his friends observed the situation, and after the mafia was finished loading the cargo into the underground storage, they left. Chang stayed a bit longer to survey the things that were there, to know how much of what was there, and so on. In the meanwhile, Young and his friends sneaked into the garage and hid behind some empty boxes. After Chang was finished with his surveying, he locked the door to the storage, and the trapdoor which leads to the storage. Both are locked with complicated PIN code passwords, and after that he closed down and locked the garage doors with a lock. Now Young and his friends were trapped in this garage and couldn't get out, but Young had a plan. Since Chang and him are brothers, Chang told Young 10 sets of codes which he uses for everything that is important to him, like account passwords and so on. So in case something bad happens to him, he can continue running everything smoothly. Young used a few of those codes on the trapdoor, and lo and behold, it opened. So they all proceeded to the tunnel and came to a very thick metal door, which had Chang's safest password, which was a combination of all his other passwords. So together, it had around 60 characters. After a while, Young figured out what to do, and they were finally able to get into the storage. As soon as they came in, they saw tons of crates, weapons of all shapes and sizes, so they decided to start opening the crates, and saw that many of them were filled with huge amounts of drugs. So since they were trapped in there, they decided to get high as hell. They spent the whole night trying out all sorts of drugs, and in the end, had an amazingly crazy time. But after a while, they all just collapsed because of overdosing. The next day, Chang came to check on the supplies in the storage and finds Young and his friends passed out with many crates being open and a lot of drugs and weapons all over the floor. The wall was shot many times and there was blood on the floor and on the wall. Turns out they had some fights with a few of the melee weapons. One of Young's friends died because of overdosing, but the rest of them were just cut up, bruised, and zoned out. When Chang saw all of this, he was overwhelmed with emotions, but mostly he felt angry and worried. He knew this was going to lead to either him or his whole family being killed. At that moment, he sent Young's friends home and told them to never return. He locked everything and took his brother back home. Then he explained the situation to his family. The next meeting with the mafia was supposed to happen in a week, when they would trade illegal goods to some buyers. 2 days after the incident, he went back and took a lot of weapons, got some of his friends together, his brother and his oldest son. And it was time to get ready for the impending mafia attack on his barbershop and home. Everything was set up, then a day before the meetup, the mafia called to arrange the exact time, and then Chang explained the situation. The mafia said that he would pay for this greatly. As expected, the mafia arrived with 6 cars in front of Mr. Chang's barbershop and started the attack. They started shooting into the shop and threw a few grenades into both the window of their house, upstairs, and the shop. From strategic locations, Chang and his little group started shooting the mafia and killed 9 members, but then 3 of the mafia's members spotted Jung and Chang's son and threw 3 grenades at them. The moment Chang saw this, he pounced to try and get them out of the way of the grenades, but he was unsuccessful, and his brother and son died. Chang was enraged by this, and then he proceeded to kill another 6 members of the mafia. Then he was shot in the leg, and a ceasefire was called. Both sides suffered big losses. Mr. Chang was invited to meet the boss of the mafia, and this was what he said. "You are an honorable man, Mr. Chang. You stood up for the mistakes of your family and protected them till the bitter end. I express my condolences for your loss, but we could not go by not reacting to what happened. Even after all of this, I shall forgive your transgressions, and we can continue doing business as before, because in the 11 years you have been working for us, this has been your only incident." After that, Mr. Chang continued with his life as it was before, and was now honest to his family about what was going on. Amongst the ranks of the mafia, he was considered a great man and a symbol of loyalty towards family. And that was the legacy of Mr. Chang.